Hello there and welcome to Coding Studio. This is B and today we are gonna be talking about loops in JavaScript. This is gonna be the last video in the beginner JavaScript tutorial series I am making. After this we are gonna be exploring a bit of TypeScript, how to use these basics in either the backend or the front-end side of web development. We are gonna start after this with creating a small web page, and then we are going to create a Node.js backend for it. But in this video we are going to be talking about loops. Now this is a semi-big topic, so the video might be a bit longer again, so please bear with me. Okay, so I've created a loop.js file. We are going to be working in this, and this is the file that's up in the GitHub repository. Of course, as usual, everything is explained in detail here, so if you forget something and don't want to rewatch the video, you can just check out that file on the GitHub. The link is going to be in the repository. The link is going to be in the video description. So let's start. In JavaScript there are two kinds of loops. One is the for loop and one is the while loop. We are going to start with the while loop because it's kind of easier. Now we use while loop when the number of iterations needed is unknown. You can think of the while loop as a way that while the condition is true, the loop will start over again. Now, so while, and then parenthesis. In the parenthesis you say the condition, so while something equals to true, and then we put curly braces, and inside here we tell it what to do. So console.log something is true. Now you might already notice that we do not have something. We have to declare it something equals true. Now this case, the whole loop would just start over and over again because something will never be not true, and that's not good, so never do that. Also, on a side note, you don't have to do this. If you know that something here is a Boolean value, you can just skip the equal part, because this is while true, console.log something is true. So inside the parentheses everything would be seen either as true or false, and if it's true then you don't have to make it equal to true because it's already a Boolean value. So actually let's try something different. It's the same as with if, so that 0 gets translated to false. So let's say something is 10, and while something is 10, while something is true, which means it's above 0, we can put it here that while something is bigger than 0, but it's unnecessary because 0 would automatically get translated as false. In this case, say something is true, and we just something minus minus without the space. And what it would do is that see if something is above 10. If something is above 0, if it's above 0, then it will log out something is true, and then subtract 1 from something. And after 10 iterations, it will be smaller than 0, or will be 0, so then something will be false, so we wouldn't get here. Let's try that out. Node loop.js. As you can see, it logged out a few times that something is true until something was a negative number. If we want to see the current value, something console.log something, and we will now see that 10, 9, 8, 2, 1, 0, and when it was 0 it didn't enter into the block here. So this is a while loop. Now in this case we would know that it's 10 iterations that needed, but let's say something equals to math.random, and we make the condition something, so while something is bigger than 0.5, which is a 50% chance, because math.random gives us a number between 0 and 1. So if something is bigger than 0.5, that you tell me the number, you say something is bigger than 0.5, we do not have to subtract here. So it will iterate until we get a value when something is smaller than 0.5. Then it will exit. And if we want to know if it really exited, console.log the while loop has ended, because this code will not get read until we pass this block, and we will only pass this block when the condition is not true anymore. So let's try that. And as we can see, okay, I am so sorry. As you can see, this didn't change because we only assigned it once. So I'm gonna copy paste this part. So something is bigger than 0.5, and then we change the value again to something different, because in this case it would be dependent on the first math.random, and this way we will change that something every time the condition is true. So let's try that again. I'm sorry for the blur. Let's try that again. The while loop has ended. Okay, that means that right off the bat it was smaller than 0.5. Let's try that again. Yeah, it iterated 2 times. One it was 0.72, one it was 0.67. And then the third time it was smaller and the loop has ended. So this is while loop, and that's how you use it. In production code you are likely not going to meet a lot of while loops. So it's good to know, because sometimes you will need it, but I don't think it will be essential in the future. But don't forget it, practice with it. And the other kind of loop, which you will see a bit more often, is the for loop. The same syntax, for, then parenthesis, then the block itself, and here we actually declare a variable, usually called I for iterations, I think, and we usually make it equal to 0 or a maximum number. This is the first part of our for loop. Let I equal 0, then we give the semicolon, then we give the conditions. If I is smaller than 100, okay, now let's just go with 10. If I is smaller than 10, and then we give this at the end, I++, which gives 1 to I. And here we do what we do every time I is smaller than 10. Console.log, we're going to use templating string here. I is smaller than 10. It is templating string, and we just pass in the I variable. Now what it does is that it sees here at the first time that I is 0, then checks if I is smaller than 10. In the first round, of course, because I is 0, that's smaller, so it runs this part of the code, and when it's over with that, it runs this, so it adds 1 to I. So it will log out 9 times this string, then I will get to 10, which is not smaller than 10, and it will exit. Let's try that. As you can see, 0 to 9, then it was 10, so this part of the code didn't get run. Now, if we were to do this in while loop, while I is smaller than 10, we copy this, we will do let I equals 0, let I equals 0, I set 0, and then at the end of this block, I plus plus. So these two are the same as this. But let's do this while, so that we know which one is the while loop and which one is the for loop. Let's say for here. If we run both of them, as you can see, the while ran 0 to 9 because I is 0, I is smaller than 10, we add 1 to I, now I is 1, which is still smaller, and then it runs 10 times from 0 to 9, because we are starting from 0, that's why it doesn't start at 1. And then exits, then it enters the for loop, which does exactly the same as this whole block here. So everything that's in here is in here. Here's the declaration, here's the condition, and the I++ is still here, and the only thing that's into the block is this. So that's part of the reason why we use for loops for that. Now if we have an array, let my array, for example, equals an array where we say first, second, third. This is a very simple array, and if I want to iterate through every element of this, I would write a for loop, make I equal to 0, I would use let, of course, I equals to 0, and I would say I is smaller than my array dot length, and then I would add 1 to I, and this way I am only iterating through this element, and this element, because it will iterate as many times as many elements I have in this array. And if I want to show you these elements, I would say console.log my array, and I want the index of I to get logged out into the console. At the first round it's going to be index 0, because we are starting with I equals 0, and you know the arrays start from 0 at the indexes. This is going to log out first, then it ends, then adds 1 to I, and this time I is going to be equal to 1, which is still smaller than the array.length, so it would get index 1, and so on to the third. If I were to log this out, as you can see, first, second, third, it iterated through the array. Now if you remember the array video, I told you about an array methods, which are gonna get a separate video for themselves. There is an array method that does exactly this, myArray.forEach, and then we give it a callback function element. So we are basically giving it a anonymous function here, and this is going to be element that's fine, and then I just want to console.log the element. It does exactly the it's just element. It does exactly the same as the for loop I've showed to you before. And let's not forget that this is a function, so and I'm not returning, and there's only one parameter, so I can lose the parentheses either. And just a trick, if you are doing this, console log is a pretty smart thing in this case, or I mean for each with the callback function, it will put the LM into the console log by itself. First, second, third. And why doesn't it do that? Because it returns the console log, okay. Oh, actually, if I give it an empty, okay, it's been a long time since I used forEach with console log. What am I doing wrong? Come on. Okay, we are gonna give it E. Okay, first, second, third. Turns out it's not that smart with the callback functions. Maybe it only works for them. But this is the same as the for loop I've shown you before. Okay, so this is the basic for loop. Now, of course, you can count from, so let's say let I equal 100, I is bigger than 0, and I minus minus. The difference is that I'm not starting from 0, I'm not checking if I is smaller, but I'm checking if I is bigger than 0, and I am subtracting 1 from I. And if I were to console.log I, in this case it would count back from 100 to 1, as you can see. So you can do it the way around than what I've just shown you before. If the logic is good up here, it will run as many times as you want it to run. This is good if there is a fixed number of iterations. So use that. Also, there's two other kinds of for loops which I wanted to show you in this video. One is for off and the other one is for in. I'm just gonna go back a few times because, yep. The for off is for arrays. For let I off my array, and this is gonna do exactly the same as it did in the forEach. If I were to console.log I, in this case, it would also log out first, second, third. Because in this case, it iterates through the array, it knows that it has 3 elements, and the I in this case is gonna be the elements of the iteration. So this is the third way of doing the same thing as I've shown you with the forEach and the for loop. The other thing is, let's create an object, let my object, and oops, sorry, and let's say the first key is going to be first, just to be, okay, let's give it string 1, second is going to be string 2, and third is going to be this. And the other kind of for loop does the same as with the array, just with object. I'm calling it my object this time, and not for off, but for in. And what it will do is it will log out the keys of the object for me. First, second, third. And if I want to know the values, I've already talked about how you log parts of the object. As you can see, it gives me the keys of it. So I can console.log my object, and if I want to iterate through the values, to get a specific value out of an object, you usually use the dot and then the name of the key, but in this case it would be I, and it doesn't like that, so you just actually use the other kind of access. And in this case it will call my object inside square brackets first, second, third. So it would get 1, 2, 3 for me this time. Exactly like that. And I can just do this actually. I'm not using templating string this time. So I want to console.log I colon my object I, and it will give me the key value pairs I want. First is 1, second is 2, third is 3. So this is the for-in. Let me tell you, you are not going to use it very much. Maybe if you are doing some practice you will, but in production code you don't really use these kind of for loops, or any kind of for loops really, because you will work with array methods, which are gonna get their own video soon. So this is all I wanted to tell you about loops. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, please leave a like, subscribe. If you don't agree with something, or you notice something, or I have missed something, please leave a comment and do tell me. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.